Page 299. 7. Marius mounted the stairs of the old tenement with slow steps, went into his room and pushed to his door behind him. It did not close. He turned and saw a hand holding the door partly open. "What is it?" he asked. "Who is there?" It was a Jondrette girl. "Is it you?" said Marius almost harshly. "You again? What do you want of me?" She seemed thoughtful and did not look at him. He had lost the assurance which she had had in the morning. She did not come in, but stopped in the dusky hall, where Marius perceived her through the half-open door. "Come now, will you answer?" said Marius. "What is it you want of me?" She raised her mournful eyes, in which a sort of confused light seemed to shine dimly, and said to him, "Monsieur Marius, you look sad. What is the matter with you?" "With me?" "Yes, you." "There is nothing the matter with me." "Yes." "No." "I tell you there is. Let me be quiet." Marius pushed the door anew. She still held it back. "Stop," said she. "You are wrong. Though you may not be rich, you were good this morning. Be so again now. Can I serve you in anything? Let me. I do not ask your secrets. You need not tell them to me, but yet I may be useful. I can certainly help you, since I help my father. When it is necessary to carry letters, go into houses, inquire from door to door, find out an address, follow somebody, I do it." An idea came into Marius's mind. What straw do we despise when we feel that we are sinking? He approached the girl. "Listen," said he to her kindly. She interrupted him with a flashy joy in her eyes. "Ah, yes, talk softly to me. I like that better." "Well," resumed he, "you brought this old gentleman here with his daughter." "Yes." "Do you know their address?" "No." "Find it for me." The girl's eyes, which had been gloomy, had become joyful. They now became dark. "Is that what you want?" she asked. "Yes." "Do you know them?" "No." "That is to say," said she hastily, "you do not know her, but you want to know her." This "them," which had become "her," had an indescribable significance and bitterness. "What will you give me?" "Anything you wish." "Anything I wish?" "Yes." "You shall have the address." She looked down, and then with a hasty movement closed the door. Marius was alone. He dropped into a chair with his head and both elbows on the bed, swallowed up in thoughts which he could not grasp, as if he were in a fit of vertigo. Suddenly he was violently awakened from his reverie. He heard the loud, harsh voice of Jondrette pronounce these words for him, full of the strangest interest. "I tell you that I am sure of it, and I recognized him." Of whom was Jondrette talking? He had recognized whom? Monsieur Leblanc? What, did Jondrette know him? Was Marius just about to get this sudden and unexpected way, all the information the lack of which made his life so obscure to himself? Was he at last to know whom he loved, who that young girl was, who her father was? Was the thick shadow which enveloped them to be rolled away? Was the veil to be rent? Oh, heavens! He sprang rather than mounted upon the bureau, and resumed his place near this little aperture in the partition. He again saw the interior of the Jondrette den. Page 301. 8. Nothing had changed in the appearance of the family, except that the wife, the daughters had opened the package and put on the woolen stockings and underclothes. 2 new coverlids were thrown over the 2 beds. Jondrette had evidently just come in. He had not yet recovered his regular breathing. His daughters were sitting on the floor near the fireplace. His wife lay as if exhausted upon the pallet near the fireplace with an astonished countenance. Jondrette was walking up and down the garret with rapid strides. His eyes had an extraordinary look. The woman, who seemed timid and stricken with stupor before her husband, ventured to say to him, "What, really? You are sure?" "Sure, it was 8 years ago, but I recognize him. Ah, I recognize him. I recognized him immediately." "What, it did not strike you?" "No, and yet I told you to pay attention. But it is the same height, the same face, hardly any older. There are some men who do not grow old. I don't know how they do it. It is the same tone of voice. He is better dressed, that is all. Ah, mysterious old devil, I have got you all right." He checked himself and said to his daughters, "You go out. It is queer that it did not strike your eye." The 2 girls went out. Just as they were passing the door, the father caught the elder by the arm and said in a peculiar tone, "You will be here at 5 o'clock precisely. Both of you. I shall need you." Marius redoubled his attention. Alone with his wife, Jondrette began to walk the room again and took 2 or 3 turns in silence. Then he spent a few minutes in tucking the bottom of the woman's chemise, which he wore which he wore into the waist of his trousers. Suddenly he turned toward the woman, folding his arms, and exclaimed, "And do you want I should tell you one thing? The young lady—" "Well, what?" said the woman. "The young lady?" Marius could doubt no longer. It was indeed of her that they were talking. He listened with an intense anxiety. His whole life was concentrated in his ears, but Jondrette stooped down and whispered to his wife. Then he straightened up and finished aloud. "It is she." "That girl?" said the wife. "That girl," said the husband. No words could express what there was in that girl of the mother. It was surprise, rage, hatred, anger, mingled and combined in a monstrous intonation. The few words that had been spoken, that some name, doubtless, which her husband had whispered in her ear, had been enough to rouse this huge, drowsy woman, and to change her repulsiveness to hideousness. "Impossible," she exclaimed, "when I think that my daughters go barefoot, and have not a dress to put on. What? A Satan pelisse, a velvet hat, buskins, and all? More than 200 francs worth. One would think she was a lady. No, you are mistaken. Why, in the first place, she was horrid. This one is not so bad. She is really not bad. It cannot be she. I tell you it is she. You will see." At this absolute affirmation, the woman raised her big red and blonde face and looked at the ceiling with a hideous expression. At that moment she appeared to Marius still more terrible than her husband. She was a swine, with the look of a tigress. "What?" she resumed. "This horrible, beautiful young lady who looked at my girls with an appearance of pity, can she be that beggar? Oh, I would like to stamp her heart out." She sprang off the bed and remained a moment standing, her hair flying, her nostrils distended, her mouth half open, her fists clenched and drawn back. Then she fell back upon the pallet. The man still walked back and forth, paying no attention to his female. After a few moments of silence he approached her, and stopped before her with folded arms as before. "And do you want I should tell you one thing?" "What?" she asked. He answered in a quick and low voice, "My fortune is made." The woman stared at him with that look which means, "Has the man who is talking to me gone crazy?" He continued, "Listen attentively. He has caught the Croesus. That is all right. He has already done. Everything is arranged. I have seen the men. He will come this evening at 6 o'clock. To bring his 60 francs. The rascal. Did you see how I got that out? My 50 francs. My landlord, my 4th of February. It is not even a quarter. Was that stupid? He will come then at 6 o'clock. Our neighbor is gone to dinner then. Mother Bergen is washing dishes in the city. There is nothing in the house. Our neighbor never comes back before 11 o'clock. The girls will stand watch. You shall help us. He will be his own executor." "And if he should not be his own executor?" asked the wife. Jondrette made a sinister gesture and said, "We will execute him." And he burst into a laugh. It was the first time that Marius had seen him laugh. This laugh was cold and feeble, and made him shudder. Jondrette opened a closet near the chimney and took out an old cap, and put it on his head after brushing it with his sleeve. "Now," said he, "I am going out. I have still some men to see, some good ones. You will see how it is going to work. I shall be back as soon as possible. It is a great hand to play. Look out for the house." Marius heard his steps recede along the hall and go rapidly down the stairs. Just then the clock of Saint Médard struck 1. Page 304. 9. On reaching number 14 Rue de Pontis, Marius went upstairs and asked for the commissary of police. "The commissary of police is not in," said one of the office boys, "but there is an inspector who answers for him. Would you like to speak to him? Is it urgent?" "Yes," said Marius. The office boy introduced him to the commissary's private room. A man of tall stature was standing there behind a railing in front of a stove, and holding up with both hands the flaps of a huge overcoat with 3 capes. He had a square face, a thin and firm mouth, very fierce, bushy, grayish whiskers, and an eye that could turn your pockets inside out. You might have said that this eye, not that it penetrated, but that it ransacked. The man's appearance was not much less ferocious or formidable than Jondrette's. It is sometimes no less startling to meet the dog than the wolf. "What do you wish?" said he to Marius without adding monsieur. "The commissary of police. He is absent. I answer for him." "It is a very secret affair." "Speak, then." "And very urgent." "Then speak quickly." This man, calm and abrupt, was at the same time alarming and reassuring. He inspired fear and confidence. Marius related his adventure. The inspector remained silent a moment, then answered between his teeth, speaking less to Marius than to his cravat. There ought to be a dash of patron minette in this. He relapsed into silence, then resumed. Number 50 to 52? I know the shanty. Impossible to hide ourselves in the interior without the artists perceiving us. Then they would leave and break up the play. They are so modest. The public annoys them. None of that. None of that. I want to hear them sing and make them dance. Marius interrupted him. That is well enough, but what are you going to do? The inspector merely answered, The lodgers in that house have latch keys to get in with at night. You must have one. Yes, said Marius. Have it with you? Yes. Give it to me, said the inspector. Marius took his key from his waistcoat, handed it to the inspector, and added, If you trust me, you will come in force. The inspector threw a glance upon Marius, such as the Voltaire would have thrown upon a provincial academician who had proposed a rhyme to him. With a single movement he plunged both hands, which were enormous, into the two immense pockets of his overcoat, and took out two small steel pistols of the kind called fisticuffs. He presented them to Marius, saying hastily and abruptly, Take these. Go back home. Hide yourself in your room. Let them think you have gone out. They are loaded, each with 2 balls. You will watch. There is a hole in the wall, as you have told me. The men will come. Let them go on a little. When you deem the affair at a point, and when it is time to stop, you will fire off a pistol. Not too soon. The rest is my affair. A pistol shot in the air into the ceiling, no matter where. Above all, not too soon. Wait till the consummation is commenced. You are a lawyer. You know what that is. Marius took the pistols and put them in the side pocket of his coat. As he placed his hand on the latch of the door to go out, the inspector called to him. By the way, if you need me between now and then, come or send here. You will ask for Inspector Javert. Evening had come. Night had almost closed in. There was now but one spot in the horizon, or in the whole sky, which was lighted by the sun. That was the moon. She was rising red behind the low dome of the La Salpêtrière. Marius returned to number 50 to 52 with rapid strides. The door was still open when he arrived. He ascended the stairs on tiptoe and glided along the wall of the hall as far as his room. This hall, it will be remembered, was lined on both sides by garrets, which were at all time empty, and to let Madame Bergen usually left the doors open. As he passed by one of these doors, Marius thought he perceived in the unoccupied cell 4 motionless heads, which were made dimly visible by a remnant of daylight falling through the little window. Marius, not wishing to be seen, did not endeavor to see. He succeeded in getting into his room without being perceived, and without any noise. It was time. A moment afterward, he heard Madame Bergen going out and closing the door of the house. Page 307. 10. Marius sat down on his bed. It might have been 5:30 o'clock. A half-hour only separated him from what was to come. He heard his arteries beat as one hears the ticking of a watch in the dark. He thought of this double march that was going on at that moment in the darkness, crime advancing on the one hand, justice coming on the other. He was not afraid, but he could not think without a sort of shudder of those things which were so soon to take place. To him, as to all those things whom some surprising adventure has suddenly befallen, this whole day seemed but a dream, and to assure himself that he was not the prey of a nightmare, he had to feel the chill of the 2 steel pistols in his fob pockets. It was not now snowing. The moon, growing brighter and brighter, was getting clear of the haze, and its light mingled with the white reflection from the fallen snow gave the room a twilight appearance. There was a light in the Jondrette den. Marius saw the hole in the partitions shine with a red gleam which appeared to him bloody. He was sure that this gleam could hardly be produced by a candle. However, there was no movement in their room. Nobody was stirring there. Nobody spoke, not a breath. The stillness was icy and deep, and save for that light which he could have believed that he was beside a sepulchre. Marius took off his boots softly and pushed them under his bed. Some minutes passed. Marius heard the lower door open on its hinges. A heavy and rapid step ascended the stairs and passed along the corridor. The latch of the garret was noisily lifted. Jondrette came in. Several voices were heard immediately. The whole family was in the garret. Only they kept silence in the absence of the master, like the cubs in the absence of the wolf. A moment afterward, Marius heard the sound of the bare feet of the 2 young girls in the passage, and the voice of Jondrette crying to them, "Pay attention now. one toward the Barriere, and the other to the corner of the Rue des Petits Banquiers. Don't lose sight of the house. Pour the house door a minute, and if you see the least thing, here immediately. Tumble along. You have a key to come in with," the elder daughter muttered, to stand sentry barefoot in the snow. "Tomorrow you shall have boots of beetle-colored silk," said the father. They went out to the stairs, and a few seconds afterward the sound of the lower door shutting announced that they had gone out. There were now in the house only Marius and the Jondrettes, and probably also the mysterious beings of whom Marius had caught a glimpse in the twilight behind the door of the untenanted garret. Marius judged that the time had come to resume his place at his observatory. In a twinkling, and with the agility of his age, he was at the hole in the partition. He looked in. The interior of the Jondrette apartment presented a singular appearance, and Marius found the explanation of the strange light which he had noticed. A candle was burning in a verdigrised candlestick, but it was not that which really lighted the room. The entire den was as if were illuminated by the reflection of a large sheet iron furnace in the fireplace, which was filled with lighted charcoal. The charcoal was burning, and the furnace was red hot. A blue flame danced over it and helped to show the form of a chisel, which was growing ruddy among the coals. In a corner near the door, and arranged as if for anticipated use, were two heaps, which appeared to be a heap of old iron and a heap of ropes. All this would have made one, who had not known nothing of what was going forward, waver between a very sinister idea and a very simple idea. The room thus lighted up seemed rather a smithy than a mouth of hell, but Jondrette in that glare had rather the appearance of a demon than of a blacksmith. The heat of the glowing coals was such that the candle upon the table melted on the side toward the furnace, and was burning fastest on that side. An old dark copper lantern, worthy of Diogenes, turned toward Catarochet, stood upon the mantel. The furnace, which was set into the fireplace beside the almost extinguished embers, sent its smoke into the flue of the chimney, and exhaled no odor. The moon, shining through the 4 panes of the window, threw its whiteness into the ruddy and flaming garret, and to Marius's poetic mind, a dreamer, even in the moment of action, it was a thought of heaven mingled with the shapeless nightmares of earth. Jondrette had lighted his pipe, sat down on a chair, and was smoking. His wife was speaking to him in a low tone. Suddenly Jondrette raised his voice. "By the way, now I think of it, in such weather as this he will come in a fiacre. Light the lantern, take it, and go down. You will stay there behind the lower door. The moment you come up, you will light him up the stairs and above the hall. And when he comes in here, you will go down again immediately, pay the driver, and send the fiacre away." "And the money?" said the woman. Jondrette fumbled in his trousers and handed her 5 francs. "What is that?" she asked. Jondrette answered with dignity. "It is the monarch which our neighbor gave us this morning, and here is the lantern. Go down quick." She hastily obeyed, and Jondrette was left alone. The fireplace and the table with 2 chairs were exactly opposite Marius. The furnace was hidden. The room was now lighted by only the candle. The least thing upon the table or the mantel made a great shadow, a broken water pitcher, masked by the half of one wall. There was in the room a calm which was inexpressibly hideous and threatening. The approach of something appalling could be felt. Jondrette had let his pipe go out, a sure sign that he was intensely absorbed, and had come back and sat down. The candle made the savage ends and the corners of his face stand out prominently. There were contractions of his brows and abrupt endings of his right hand, as if he were applying to the last counsel of a dark interior monologue. In one of these obscure scenes which he was making to himself, he drew the table drawer out quickly toward him, took out a large carving knife which was hidden there, and tried its edge on his nail. This done, he put the knife back into the drawer and shut it. Marius, for his part, grasped the pistol which was in his right fob pocket, took it out and cocked it. The pistol in cocking gave a little, clear, sharp sound. Jondrette started and half rose from his chair. "Who is there?" cried he. Marius held his breath. Jondrette listened a moment, and then began to laugh, saying, "What a fool I am! Is the partition cracking?" Marius kept the pistol in his hand. Page 310. 11. Just then the distant and melancholy vibration of a bell shook the windows. 6 o'clock struck on St. Medard. Jondrette marked each stroke with a nod of his head. At the 6th stroke he snuffed out the candle with his fingers. Then he began to walk about the room, listened in the hall, walked, listened again. "Provided he comes," muttered he, and then returned to his chair. He had hardly sat down when the door opened. The mother Jondrette had opened it and stood in the hall, making a horrible, amiable grimace which was lighted up from beneath by one of the holes of the dark lantern. "Walk in," said she. "Walk in, my benefactor," repeated Jondrette, rising precipitately. Monsieur Leblanc appeared. He had an air of serenity which made him singularly venerable. He laid 4 louis upon the table. "That is for your rent and for your pressing wants. We will see about the rest." "God reward you, my generous benefactor," said Jondrette, and rapidly approaching his wife. "Send away the fiacre." She slipped away while her husband was lavishing bows and offering a chair to Monsieur Leblanc. A moment afterwards she came back and whispered in his ear, "It is done." The snow which had fallen that morning was so deep that they had not heard the fiacre arrive, and did not hear it go away. Meanwhile, Monsieur Leblanc had taken a seat. Jondrette had taken possession of the other chair opposite Monsieur Leblanc. Now, to form an idea of the scene which follows, let the reader call to mind the chilly night of the solitudes of La Sepulture, covered with snow and white in the moonlight, the immense shrouds, the flickering light of the street lamps here and there reddening these tragic boulevards, and the long rows of the black elms, not a passer perhaps within a mile around, the Gorbeau tenement at its deepest degree of silence, horror, and night in that tenement, in the midst of these solitudes, in the midst of this darkness, the vast Jondrette garret lighted by a candle, and in this den 2 men seated at a table, Monsieur Leblanc tranquil, Jondrette smiling and terrible, his wife the wolf dam in the corner, and behind the partition Marius, invisible, alert, losing no word, losing no movement, his eye on the watch, the pistol in his grasp. Marius, moreover, was experiencing nothing but an emotion of horror, no fear. He clasped the butt of his pistol and felt reassured. "I shall stop this wretch when I please," thought he. He felt that the police were somewhere nearby, in an ambush waiting the signal agreed upon, and all ready to stretch out their arms. He hoped, moreover, that from this terrible meeting between Jondrette and Monsieur Leblanc, some light would be thrown upon all that he was interested to know. Page 312. 12. While Jondrette was talking to Monsieur Leblanc, with an apparent disorder which detracted nothing from the crafty and cunning expression of his physiognomy, Marius raised his eyes and perceived at the back of the room somebody whom he had not seen before. A man had come in so noiselessly that nobody had heard. The door turned on its hinges. This man had a knit woolen waistcoat of violet color, old, worn out, stained, cut, and showing gaps in all its folds, full trousers of cotton velvet, socks on his feet, no shirt, his neck bare, his arms bare, and tattooed in his face stained black. He sat down in silence and with folded arms on the nearest bed, and as he kept behind the woman, he was distinguished only with difficulty. That kind of magnetic instinct which warns the eye made Monsieur Leblanc turn almost at the same time with Marius. He could not help a movement of surprise. "Who is that man?" said he. "That man," said Jondrette. "That is my neighbor. Pay no attention to him." The neighbor had a singular appearance. However, factories of chemical products abound in Faubourg Saint-Marceau. Many Page 313. Many mechanists might have their faces blacked. The whole person of Monsieur Leblanc, moreover, breathed a candid and intrepid confidence. He resumed. "Pardon me, what were you saying to me?" "I was telling you, monsieur and dear patron," replied Jondrette, leaning his elbows on the table, and gazing at Monsieur Leblanc with a fixed and tender eye, similar to the eye of a boa constrictor. "I was telling you that I had a picture to sell." A slight noise was made at the door. A second man entered, and he sat down on the bed behind the female Jondrette. He had his arms bare like the first, and a mask of ink or of soot. Although this man had literally slipped into the room, he could not prevent Monsieur Leblanc from perceiving him. "Do not mind them," said Jondrette. "They are people of the house. I was telling you, then, that I have a valuable painting left. Here, monsieur, look." He got up, went to the wall at the foot of which stood a panel, which he turned round, still leaving it resting against the wall. It was something, in fact, that resembled a picture, and which the candle scarcely revealed. Marius could make nothing of it. Jondrette being between him and the picture, he merely caught a glimpse of a coarse daub, with a sort of principal personage coloured in the crude and glaring style of strolling panoramas and paintings upon screens. "What is that?" asked Monsieur Leblanc. Jondrette exclaimed. "A painting by a master, a picture of great price, my benefactor. I cling to it as to my two daughters. It calls up memories to me, but I have told you, and I cannot unsay it. I am so unfortunate that I will part with it." Whether by chance or whether there was some beginning of distrust while examining the picture, Monsieur Leblanc glanced toward the back of the room. There were now 4 men there, 3 seated on the bed, 1 standing near the door, casing. All 4 bare-armed men, motionless and with blackened faces. One of those who were on the bed was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed, and one would have said that he was asleep. This one was old. His white hair over his black face was horrible. The 2 others appeared young. One was bearded, the other had long hair. None of them had shoes on. Those who did not have socks were barefooted. Jondrette noticed that Monsieur Leblanc's eye was fixed upon these men. "They are friends. They live nearby," said he. "They are dark because they work in charcoal. They are chimney doctors. Do not occupy your mind with them, my benefactor, but buy my picture. Take pity on my misery. I shall not sell it to you at a high price. How much do you estimate it to be worth?" "But," said Monsieur Leblanc, looking Jondrette full in the face like a man who puts himself on guard, "this is some tavern sign. It is worth about 3 francs. Jondrette answered calmly, "Have you your pocketbook here? I will be satisfied with 1,000 crowns. Monsieur Leblanc rose to his feet, placed his back to the wall, and ran his eye rapidly over the room. He had Jondrette at his left on the side toward the window, and Jondrette's wife and the 4 men at his right on the side toward the door. The 4 men did not stir and had not even the appearance of seeing him. Jondrette had begun to talk in a plaintive key, with his eyes so wild and his tones so mournful that Monsieur Leblanc might have thought that he had before his eyes nothing more or less than a man gone crazy from misery. "If you do not buy my picture, dear benefactor," said Jondrette, "I am without resources. I have only to throw myself into the river." While speaking, Jondrette did not look at Monsieur Leblanc, who was watching him. Monsieur Leblanc's eye was fixed upon Jondrette, and Jondrette's eye upon the floor. Marius's breathless attention went from the one to the other. Monsieur Leblanc appeared to ask himself, "Is this an idiot?" Jondrette repeated 2 or 3 times with all sorts of varied inflections in the drawing and begging style, "I can only throw myself into the river. I went down 3 steps for that the other day by the side of the bridge of Austerlitz." Suddenly his dull eye lighted up with a hideous glare. This little man straightened up and became horrifying. He took a step toward Monsieur Leblanc and cried to him in a voice of thunder, "But all this is not the question. Do you know me?" Page 315. 18. The door of the garret had been suddenly flung open, disclosing 3 men in blue blouses with black paper masks. The first was spare and had a long iron-bound cudgel. The second, who was a sort of a colossus, held by the middle of the handle, with an axe down, a butcher's pole-axe. The third, a broad-shouldered man, not so thin as the first, nor so heavy as the second, held in his clenched fist an enormous key stolen from the prison door. It appeared that it was the arrival of these men for which Jondrette was waiting. A rapid dialogue commenced between him and the man with the cudgel, the spare man. "Is everything ready?" said Jondrette. "Yes," answered the spare man. "Where is Montparnasse, then?" The young primate stopped to chat with your daughter. "Which one?" "The elder." "Is there a fiacre below?" "Yes." "The Mariengot is ready." "Ready." "With 2 good horses?" "Excellent." "It is waiting where I said it should wait." "Yes." "Good," said Jondrette. Monsieur Leblanc was very pale. He looked over everything in the room about him like a man who understands into which he has fallen, and his head, directed in turn toward all the heads which surrounded him, moved on his neck with an attentive and astonished slowness. But there was nothing in his manner which resembled fear. He had made an extemporized entrenchment of the table, and this man, who the moment before had the appearance only of a good old man, had suddenly become a sort of athlete, and placed his powerful fist upon the back of his chair, and with surprising and formidable gesture. 3 of the men whom Jondrette had said, "They are chimney doctors," had taken from the heap of old iron a large pair of shears, a steel yard bar, and a hammer, and placed themselves before the door without saying a word. The old man was still on the bed, and had merely opened his eyes. The woman Jondrette was sitting beside him. Marius thought that in a few more seconds' time, more the time